You know, of all the influences in our kids' lives, even the parents and the church are not going to have nearly as much of their attention units and time as school, where they're going to check into this government institution at 7:15 in the morning, and with extracurricular activities, they might be there till 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and then be working on school-related stuff after they go home. So a youth minister has to care. Mm-hmm. Is the school itself organized, or is the culture of the school provoking more experienced anxiety among the young people? What do you think?
That's a great question, and there's a lot of debate about that ongoing in my experience. So a couple of thoughts about it. I think on the one hand, many educators, and I'll speak of public schools because that's what I'm most familiar with and what my kids are a part of. There's a lot of emphasis, maybe more than ever, on social and emotional learning, creating safe spaces for different types of learning styles, different kinds of experiences and personalities. There's probably more attention paid to that than ever before that I'm aware of. On the other hand, we know that anxiety levels are extremely high in school. If a quarter to a third of school-age kids are feeling anxious, that inevitably is going to impact the school environment. And so the question becomes, how do you best manage that in a educative context? And I think awareness is really important so that students are in classes with teachers and administrators who know that, for example, 8 to 10% of school absenteeism is attributable to some form of anxiety. So anxious kids are out of school more often. Anxious kids are less likely to participate in school and may be identified as having no interest or maybe even sometimes lower intelligence, neither of which is the case, but the anxiety is getting in the way of instruction. So being aware of that's really important. And, it's a controversial topic, but there's so much emphasis in public education on standardized test scores that kids begin to experience early on. In my case in Texas, it's the 3rd grade. And kids will be able to identify their own anxiety about that experience because teachers feel anxious about it, administrators feel anxious about it, superintendents feel anxious about it because it's tied to funding and all kinds of resources. But that trickles down to the kids' experience too, so that in the days running up to the standardized testing, you can feel a palpable anxiety within the school building and an exhaling of that, if you will, after it's over with. So I think attention needs to be paid to that phenomenon as well as it relates to anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those things. It doesn't seem like the schools these days, broad generalization, do enough with different intelligences and creativity, and which are other forms of knowing that I think ameliorate anxiety in some ways. But I think there's so much. And teachers may not feel like they have the chance to be as creative in the classroom or evoke as much mystery in teaching as they would like. Another thing I'll just mention, I read recently that standardized test scores are now being used to plan for prison blocks in the state of Texas. So there's of a direct school-to-prison pipeline that, the society is planning for some kids to be incarcerated after school, and that maps against their school experience, which becomes in minority communities, poor communities, very militarized, and kids are treated very punitively. There's some experiments with things like peer juries in schools that help students to kind of find other solutions outside just the punitive expelling. But that pattern of expelling kids who are perceived as threats is a really discouraging one in low-income communities. And low-income communities also have different struggles around pride. Can I feel proud of my school? Is this a school that's good to be associated with? And it's really important if they can find some ways to cultivate pride or identity beyond the label of a bad school if you got a low great schools rating or something like that.